actually an attraction of the Dells. This was originally a manufacturing facility for these small gauge trains. Excuse me. The Sandleys started making small gauge trains for amusement parks, zoos, plantations, and that occasionally eccentric millionaire wanting his own private railway back in 1948 in Janesville, Wisconsin at Riverside Park. Now business was doing pretty well for the Sandleys, but times were also good for the city, who experienced a small population boom and people started building their houses around the park. Wasn't long before those new neighbors were complaining about the noise and the smell of little steam engines, and the ladies were complaining about hanging their nice white linen outside to dry, come back finding speckled with coal dust and soot. So the city decided not to renew their lease, which forced the Sandleys to relocate. That's when they found this stretch of abandoned railroad right-of-way. This railroad right-of-way was actually built in 1854 by the La Crosse and Milwaukee Road. Full-size steam trains traveled through here, and the line also carried Civil War soldiers on their way to battle. In 1902, the railroad realized they moved their line just a couple hundred feet to the south to where the existing railroad is today. They wouldn't have near as many hills and curves. So the Sandleys moved here in 1952, rebuilding their demonstration track and work buildings. They manufactured around 19 steam locomotives, somewhere around 20 diesel locomotives, hundreds of cars of rolling stock. These trains went all over the United States. In 1982, Elmer, the owner, passed away, and unfortunately the place went bankrupt shortly thereafter. Now the place remained abandoned for about 10 years until a group of individuals who grew up here in the Dells, remembering the Sandleys and the free train rides the Sandleys used to give children on the weekends, they banded together and was able to convince the bank to let them take over the debt and turn this into a living museum. Now back then, the entire railroad line had overgrown with trees and brush, all which needed to be cut and removed, and then they had to replace more than 5,000 railroad ties by hand. That project took 2 years for them to complete, and it was done entirely by volunteers. Now today, the society still depends on its volunteers. Everybody you see working here today, including myself and your engineer up there, Santa Claus, we're all volunteers. We give up our weekends and our vacations. We actually have 3 couples from Florida, another couple from North Carolina. They come up every summer, camp out with us, and help us run our little railway. We have members from all surrounding states that like to come up for a weekend here and a weekend there. If you're interested in becoming a member, just talk to any one of us. We'll be glad to tell you all about it. Now, that little railroad bridge that we crossed, that bridge never used to be there. That used to be a land bridge that was put in by the railroad back in the 1800s. It was 20 foot wide at the top, 40 foot wide at the bottom, and stood 50 feet tall. In May and June of 2004, it rained here in the Dells. Weather Service said it rained 58 days out of 60. One night in late June, the Dells received 10 inches of rain in less than 2 hours' time, which caused massive flash flooding throughout all of central Wisconsin. Now every morning before we allow passengers on the line, we do a track inspection. The person who did track inspection that morning got to that point, saw that the line had completely washed out and the rails were hanging over the cliffs looking like wet noodles. He came back and was just in tears, and a lot of our members cried that day because we thought our little railroad was doomed. But the area was declared a federal disaster zone. FEMA came in, and with funds from FEMA, a lot of private donations, and a big juicy loan from the bank we're still working on, we were able to build that bridge. That bridge cost $530,000 to put in. Now the tickets you guys purchased today, that helps ensure that we keep on running throughout the year. It helps pay for the mortgage, the light bill, the taxes, the diesel fuel. Our insurance alone runs us close to $80,000 a year. It's through private donations that we're actually able to do our maintenance and restoration work, like our brand new turntable, 9 weeks old.